And we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Kissed Ino Instead of Sasuke at Academy Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. The sun was shining brightly over the Hidden Leaf Village, casting long shadows across the academy courtyard. Naruto Uzumaki sat at his usual seat, a large bowl of instant ramen in front of him, grinning like an idiot as he slurped down his noodles. His bright orange jumpsuit stood out against the green trees and stone paths of the village like a beacon. The wind ruffled his spiky blonde hair, but Naruto didn't seem to notice. It was another typical day at the academy. The loud chattering of his classmates filled the air, mixed with the occasional sounds of shuffling papers or the scraping of chalk on the blackboard. However, for Naruto, it wasn't just any ordinary day. Today, something was going to change. "Hey, Naruto," a voice rang out from behind him. He turned around to see his longtime friend, Sasuke Uchiha, sitting with his usual calm and collected demeanor. "What's up, Sasuke?" Naruto grinned, always eager to talk to his rival, though today, there was something in the air that made his usual bravado seem a bit forced. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "Did you hear what Ino's doing today?" Naruto blinked, confused. "Ino? What's she up to now? Probably something stupid, right?" Sasuke didn't answer right away, his yes narrowing as he glanced toward the far side of the room. There, Ino Yamanaka, one of the most popular girls at the academy, sat with her usual confidence, talking animatedly with her friends. Her blonde hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes glinted with mischief. Naruto felt a strange tension in the air as he turned back to Sasuke. "What about Ino?" he asked, now genuinely curious. Sasuke gave a small smirk, though his expression didn't show much emotion. "She's got a bet going. Wants to see who can kiss her first. And guess who the lucky candidate is?" Naruto's face flushed instantly. What?" Sasuke shrugged, almost nonchalantly. "She's got it in her head that you're the one who's gonna do it, because of that hero thing you always talk about." Naruto blinked in disbelief. "No way. I'm not some kind of joke for her too. She said she'd make it worth your while." Sasuke cut him off, his eyes glinting. Naruto's mind raced. He wasn't exactly the smoothest with girls, but he wasn't stupid. He knew this was one of those situations where things could go south very quickly if he didn't play it right. Still, his pride wouldn't let him back down from a challenge. "You know what?" Naruto stood up from his seat with a grin. "I'll do it. Who cares? I'm not afraid of some silly bet." Sasuke's smirk deepened, but there was a glint of something more calculating behind it. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Ino's eyes sparkled with amusement as Naruto approached her, his footsteps quick and sure. She was sitting with her friends, Hinata and Sakura, who watched the scene unfold with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Sakura's eyes narrowed at the sight of Naruto, her expression unreadable. Well, if it isn't the hero of the village," Ino said with a playful smile, crossing her arms over her chest. "So, Naruto, are you ready to take on the challenge?" Naruto gave a cocky grin and puffed out his chest. "Of course. You're not the only one who can make a bet." Sakura snorted, trying to hide her smile behind her hand. She had always found Naruto's antics both irritating and endearing, but she couldn't deny that there was something about him today, something different. Ino's friends giggled, exchanging knowing glances. "All right, Naruto," Ino continued. "Kiss me, and I'll call it a win. But be warned, I'm not just gonna let you off easy." The class had started to notice, and murmurs spread like wildfire. The whispers of, "Is Naruto really going to kiss Ino?" filled the air. Naruto felt his heart race, his mouth going dry, but he wasn't going to back down. He had accepted the challenge, after all. He stood still for a moment, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, wondering if he was about to make a huge mistake. But before he could second-guess himself, Ino leaned forward just a little bit, her face expectant, her eyes mischievous. Well? She asked, her tone playful. You're not gonna back out now, are you? Naruto took a deep breath, and in one sudden motion, he closed the gap between them. His hand reached for her shoulder, almost instinctively, as if he had done it 1,000 times before, and then, without thinking too much about it, he kissed her. But it wasn't just a simple peck on the cheek. His lips brushed against hers, soft at first, then firmer as the shock of the moment hit both of them. Ino's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to pause. A few seconds later, Naruto pulled away, his face red with embarrassment as the room erupted in a chorus of gasps, followed by nervous laughter. He blinked, trying to process what had just happened. Sorry. He stammered, his heart thundering in his chest. Ino stood frozen for a moment, her hand instinctively touching her lips. There was a strange warmth in her chest, something she hadn't expected. She had thought it would be just another embarrassing moment to tease Naruto about, but instead, something inside her stirred, something that felt both familiar and completely new. Sakura's face had gone pale, and even Sasuke, who had been watching from the sidelines, couldn't quite hide his surprise. Ino blinked rapidly, trying to regain her composure. She wasn't sure how to react. Was she angry, embarrassed, or was there something else, something deeper, that she was suddenly noticing about Naruto? Finally, she looked at him, her lips curving into a smile that was softer than usual. Well, Naruto, you certainly made things interesting. She paused. But I don't think this is over. Naruto's eyes widened. Huh, what do you mean by that? Ino leaned back, crossing her arms and giving him a playful look. I'm not just gonna let you off the hook that easily. You've started something now, so be prepared for whatever comes next. Naruto Uzumaki. The aftermath of the kiss hung in the air like a dense fog. Naruto stood awkwardly in front of Ino, feeling his face burn with embarrassment as his classmates stared at him with a mix of surprise and amusement. His usual brashness seemed to have evaporated in the face of the unexpected kiss. Sakura, her eyes wide and her mouth slightly agape, stood frozen at her desk, hands clenched at her sides. She had never imagined this would happen. Ino, always so confident and flirtatious, was now the subject of everyone's attention, not to mention the object of Naruto's impulsive affection. Well, that was. Naruto scratched the back of his head nervously, unable to come up with anything coherent. His gaze flickered back to Ino, who was still standing there, hand against her lips, a look of both surprise and something else in her eyes. Was it confusion? Ino, as always, recovered quickly, her usual playful grin returning to her face. But there was something different about it today, something that Naruto couldn't quite place. So, what now, Naruto? Ino asked, her voice light, though her eyes were less mocking than usual. She tilted her head, as if contemplating something. Are you going to keep running your mouth like usual, or is there something more to you than that big mouth and those weird hair spikes? Naruto blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Ino didn't answer right away. Instead, she gave him one last look, her gaze flicking to the side where Sakura stood, clearly struggling with her emotions. The moment wasn't lost on Ino, and she felt a strange knot form in her chest. Why was this feeling so complicated? Sakura, always vocal about her feelings, suddenly turned and stormed out of the classroom, muttering something about stupid boys and their stupid pranks. Oi, Sakura, Naruto called after her, but she was already gone. Naruto looked back at Ino, who now appeared slightly concerned. Maybe you should go talk to her, Ino suggested, her tone softer than usual. Naruto scratched his head, feeling the weight of her words. Yeah, maybe. But, that kiss, does it mean anything to you, Ino? Ino blinked, and for the first time, her confident smile faltered. I don't know, Naruto. Do you think it means something? Before Naruto could respond, Iruka, their sensei, entered the classroom, his presence demanding immediate attention. All right, class, settle down. We've got a new assignment today. Iruka clapped his hands, and the students immediately quieted down, returning to their seats. Naruto glanced at Ino one last time before taking his seat. The kiss had done more than just spark a bet. It had stirred something between them, something unspoken, yet undeniable. Later that day, after the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Iruka gathered the students together for an unexpected announcement. We've received a mission from the Hokage, Iruka said, his voice serious. It's a relatively simple escort mission, but it's important, nonetheless. Naruto, Ino, Sasuke, and Sakura, your team will be taking it. The mention of Ino's name sent a jolt through Naruto's chest. He hadn't expected to be paired with her so soon after the kiss. The awkwardness from that morning still lingered, and now, they'd be forced to spend even more time together. Sasuke, sitting on the other side of the room, glanced at Naruto with an unreadable expression. Sakura, still visibly upset, didn't make eye contact with anyone as she shuffled to join the group. Ino, on the other hand, caught Naruto's gaze. Her expression was inscrutable, partially playful, partially thoughtful. It was as though she was waiting for something. All right, everyone, Iruka continued, snapping Naruto out of his thoughts. Pack your things. We leave first thing tomorrow. As the students filed out of the classroom, Naruto found himself walking alongside Ino. The others had already left, and there was a brief, awkward silence between them. Neither of them knew exactly how to act. Ino, breaking the silence, smirked. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but, you actually didn't do too bad today. Naruto's heart skipped a beat at her words. You're not mad. Ino shook her head, her eyes glinting with something he couldn't quite decipher. Mad? No. Just surprised. But I guess that's what I get for underestimating you. Naruto scratched the back of his head again, his usual grin returning. I'm full of surprises, you know. But hey, we're teammates now, so let's make this mission count. Ino's lips twitched upward, a hint of a smile forming. Yeah, let's. The next day, Naruto, Ino, Sasuke, and Sakura gathered at the village gates, ready to leave for their mission. Iruka gave them the rundown of their task: escort a visiting diplomat from the land of rivers to a nearby border town. The journey should take a few days, and the diplomat had requested the presence of a strong, capable team for protection. As they set out on the road, the tension between Naruto and Ino was palpable. They spoke to each other only when necessary, their words lingering with an awkwardness that neither could escape. Naruto's usual loud banter and teasing seemed muted in Ino's presence, as if he were waiting for her to say something first. Sasuke, walking ahead of them, kept his usual stoic expression, while Sakura kept to herself, clearly deep in thought. You know, Ino spoke up suddenly, breaking the silence, I've been thinking. Naruto turned to her, raising an eyebrow. About what? Ino glanced at him, her gaze softening. About how much of a fool I've been. I mean, I've always been focused on the wrong things, looks, popularity, but you, Naruto, you've got something more. It's your drive, your will. That's something I respect. Naruto blinked, surprised by her words. Huh, wait, what are you talking about, Ino? Ino smiled, a genuine, almost vulnerable smile. Maybe I've been wrong about you, Naruto. Maybe there's more to you than just the loudmouth who never quits. Naruto felt a warmth spread through his chest. I don't know about that, but if there's one thing I do know, it's that I'm not gonna quit on this mission. And if you want me to be serious about this whole teammate thing, I can be serious. Ino looked at him for a long moment before nodding. All right, Naruto, let's make it count. The journey toward the border town was long, and as night began to fall, the team set up camp. A fire crackled in the middle of their small clearing, casting dancing shadows across their tired faces. Ino and Naruto sat opposite each other by the fire, while Sakura and Sasuke took the other side, not speaking much. In the stillness of the night, the stars above twinkled brightly, and for the first time since the kiss, Naruto and Ino found themselves alone together. Naruto glanced at her, unsure of what to say. The kiss had been a catalyst, something neither of them had expected but neither could ignore. Ino, Naruto said quietly, about what happened, back in the academy. I didn't mean to make things weird between us. Ino looked up, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, she chuckled softly, the sound carrying gently in the night air. Don't worry, Naruto. It's not weird. Not unless we make it weird. Naruto stared at her, a mixture of relief and confusion flooding his mind. So, we're good. Ino's eyes softened. Yeah, Naruto. We're good. After the escort mission, Naruto had received a surprising offer from the Hokage. As the academy graduation ceremony drew to a close, the moment everyone had been waiting for finally arrived, the formation of teams. Naruto stood among his classmates, his heart pounding in his chest. He had expected the usual team lineup, with him stuck with some combination of the other rookies. But the moment the Hokage spoke, he felt his world shift. Team 10 will consist of Naruto Uzumaki, Ino Yamanaka, and Shikamaru Nara, the Hokage announced. Naruto blinked in confusion. What? Wait. What? He turned to Ino, who was standing beside him. She met his gaze with a wide grin. You're with me now, Uzumaki. Better keep up, she teased, her usual confidence on full display. There was a hint of something else in her smile, maybe excitement, maybe something more, but Naruto couldn't tell. Sasuke had been placed on a different team with Sakura, and while Naruto was happy for his former rival, he couldn't shake the feeling that his new team would be different. Team 10 had its own unique energy, one that Naruto wasn't quite sure how to handle. The morning after the team assignments, Naruto, Ino, and Shikamaru met up at the entrance to the village. Their sensei, Asuma Sarutobi, was already waiting for them, leaning against a post with his trademark cigarette dangling from his mouth. He took a long drag before exhaling slowly. All right, team, Asuma began, his voice calm and steady. Your first mission is an A-rank operation. We're tasked with investigating a series of attacks along the borders of the Fire Country. A group of rogue ninjas has been causing trouble, and we're to find out what they're up to and put a stop to it. It's serious, so don't take this lightly. Naruto grinned, the excitement of his first real mission as a genin bubbling in his chest. No problem. We'll take them down easy. Ino shot him a sideways glance, her eyes narrowed but with a playful spark. Don't get too cocky, Naruto. You may be loud, but you need to think first. We're not just going in swinging. Shikamaru, standing beside Ino, yawned lazily. TCH, this is going to be such a drag, he muttered, clearly more focused on avoiding responsibility than the mission itself. Ino rolled her eyes. Stop whining, Shikamaru. This is important. We need to make sure we're prepared for anything. Asuma stepped forward, his expression serious. Listen to Ino. Your instincts are strong, but you also need to work together. Don't be impulsive, Naruto. This isn't just about fighting. It's about using your heads. Naruto puffed out his chest and gave a thumbs up. Got it, sensei. The team traveled for a full day before they encountered any sign of the rogue ninjas. Naruto was bouncing on his heels, eager for action, but Ino, ever the strategist, kept her focus sharp. They were making their way through a dense forest when Shikamaru's sharp eyes picked up something. Hold up, he said quietly, signaling for the group to stop. Ino immediately moved into position, scanning the surroundings with a cautious gaze. What's going on, Shikamaru? Footprints. They're fresh, but they don't look like they belong to anyone local, Shikamaru explained, kneeling to inspect the ground. They're headed toward the cliffside. Could be an ambush. Ino's eyes narrowed. Ambush. That's just what we need. Let's be ready for anything. Naruto grinned. An ambush. Sounds fun to me. Shikamaru sighed, clearly not thrilled by the prospect of a fight, but he knew it was inevitable. Let's just get this over with. As they continued, the atmosphere grew heavier, and Naruto couldn't help but notice the way Ino kept glancing at him every so often. Her usual confident demeanor was slightly muted, but there was a determination in her eyes that he found both intriguing and reassuring. It reminded him of the resolve he often saw in himself. When they reached the cliffside, the rogue ninjas appeared out of the trees, attacking without warning. A wave of shuriken rained down on them, but Ino's quick thinking saved them. With a swift motion, she activated her mind transfer jutsu, directing the rogue ninjas' bodies to stop in mid-motion, freezing them in place. Naruto, now, she yelled. Naruto, following her command, rushed in with a fierce battle cry. His Rasengan spiraled to life in his hand, and in an instant, he launched it at the immobilized ninjas. The explosion of chakra sent a shockwave through the area, taking down most of the group. Shikamaru's shadow extended, capturing the remaining rogue ninjas before they could regroup. That was easy, he remarked, his voice flat. Ino stepped forward, wiping the sweat from her brow. Nice job, Naruto. I've got to admit, that was impressive. Naruto grinned. Told ya, when I'm on a roll, no one can stop me. Shikamaru groaned. You're all such a drag. We still need to figure out who's behind this and why they're targeting the borders. But, I guess this was a good start. Ino turned to Naruto, a hint of admiration in her eyes. You did well, Naruto. But you know, we'll need to be smarter next time. You're strong, but you need to think before you charge in. Naruto nodded, his usual bravado now tempered by a more serious focus. I get it, Ino. I'll try to listen more. After the battle, the team returned to the village to report their success. However, something about the mission had shifted. The way Ino looked at Naruto wasn't just the playful teasing from before. There was something else, something that lingered after the dust had settled. They sat around the campfire that night, their mission complete and the moon hanging high above them. Asuma had left to make a report to the Hokage, leaving them with a moment of peace. Naruto, feeling a strange mixture of pride and nervousness, turned to Ino. Hey, about earlier. I know I don't always listen, but you really know how to lead. You saved my skin back there. Ino raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smile. It's part of being a team, Naruto. We all have to cover for each other. But, maybe you should try not to get into so much trouble next time. Naruto's grin was wide. I'll try my best. But you know I can't help it. I'm too awesome. Ino laughed softly, shaking her head. You're something else, Naruto. But as they sat in the quiet of the night, the bond between them felt different. It wasn't just the thrill of a successful mission or the adrenaline of battle. It was something deeper, something that had grown between them over the past few days. For the first time, Ino wasn't just looking at Naruto as the loud, boisterous ninja who always rushed in headfirst. She saw him as someone she could rely on, someone who, despite his reckless nature, had a heart full of determination. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to their connection than she had realized. Naruto, too, was starting to understand that Ino wasn't just the girl from the academy. She was smart, capable, and more than he had given her credit for. And maybe, there was something in her eyes now that made him think he wanted to be more than just her teammate. The sun rose high over the village, and Team 10 was already on the move. They had received a new assignment, a diplomatic mission to investigate tensions along the borders of the Land of Waves. It was a simple job, but the longer they traveled together, the more complicated their feelings became. Naruto, Ino, Shikamaru, and Asuma trekked through the dense forests of the Land of Waves, preparing for the next stage of their mission. As they walked side by side, Naruto couldn't help but notice how much he'd come to enjoy Ino's presence. There was something about the way she challenged him, pushing him to think more strategically while still appreciating his boldness. Ino, on the other hand, was starting to recognize how different Naruto was from the brash, noisy boy she once thought she understood. His stubbornness had always been something she mocked, but there was an underlying depth to him, an earnestness that she found intriguing. It was that same intensity that had made her respect him on their first mission together, and now, after spending more time as teammates, something more was beginning to stir inside her. She glanced at him now, catching him mid-laugh at something Shikamaru had said. A warm, almost protective feeling bloomed in her chest as she observed him. She didn't know when it happened, but she was starting to care about him, more than just as a teammate. The realization made her heart race, and for a moment, she looked away, afraid of what those feelings might mean. Meanwhile, Naruto was just as confused. He had never really thought about Ino in a romantic way, but now that they were working together so closely, he was beginning to see her differently. It was subtle at first, like the way she smiled at him when he cracked a joke or the way her eyes softened when he wasn't looking. He found himself thinking about her even when he wasn't supposed to. But every time he saw her, it felt like something shifted inside him. He wanted to protect her, make her laugh, and maybe something more. But would she ever see him in that way? He wasn't sure. As they walked, Naruto decided to break the silence. "Hey, Ino," he called out, falling back slightly to walk beside her. Ino raised an eyebrow, turning toward him. "What's up, Naruto?" Naruto scratched the back of his head, his usual awkwardness returning. Thanks for everything, back on that last mission. You really saved my skin with that mind transfer jutsu." Ino's eyes softened for a moment. "Don't mention it. We're a team now, remember? We've got each other's backs." Naruto felt a rush of warmth at her words. He smiled brightly, but there was an intensity in his gaze that hadn't been there before. "Yeah, I like being on your team." Ino blinked, slightly taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. "Well, I like having you here too," she said, her tone a little quieter than usual. Before Naruto could respond, Shikamaru interrupted them with his usual laid-back attitude. "TCH, you two lovebirds need to focus. We've got a mission to complete." Ino rolled her eyes, clearly irritated by his interruption. "Shut up, Shikamaru. Stop being such a downer all the time." But even as she said it, there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. For a brief moment, she felt a twinge of something, jealousy. No, it wasn't jealousy, she told herself. It was just, Naruto was hers to protect, wasn't he? Their journey through the forest wasn't as peaceful as they'd hoped. As night fell and the team set up camp, a series of strange sounds echoed through the trees. The air was thick with tension. They weren't alone. Suddenly, a group of rogue ninjas emerged from the shadows, surrounding the camp. The team quickly went into defensive mode, Naruto jumping to his feet with his usual energy. "Looks like we've got company." Naruto grinned, eyes sparkling with excitement. "Time to kick some butt." Ino, her mind already calculating, moved quickly to position herself between Naruto and the attackers. "No rushing in without a plan, Naruto," she snapped, her tone sharp. She turned to Shikamaru. "We need to work together. Can you set up a shadow trap?" Shikamaru grumbled but nodded. "It's a drag, but fine. Keep them distracted for a bit." As Shikamaru prepared his shadow jutsu, Naruto nodded at Ino. "I'll keep them busy. You do your thing." Before Ino could respond, Naruto dashed forward, throwing kunai at the nearest rogue ninja. His Rasengan formed in his hand, ready to take on anyone who dared to get in his way. Ino, using her mind transfer jutsu, sent her consciousness into one of the attackers, forcing him to halt mid-motion. The other rogue ninjas froze in place, giving Shikamaru the perfect opportunity to extend his shadow and trap several of them in place. "Perfect!" Ino shouted, her voice filled with determination. "Now, Naruto, go!" Naruto charged forward, using his speed and strength to take down the immobilized enemies one by one. The battle was fast-paced, and in the chaos, Naruto couldn't help but notice the way Ino moved with precision, her focus on protecting him, her constant glances to make sure he was safe. When the last rogue ninja fell, Naruto stood panting, his chest heaving with excitement. "That was awesome," he exclaimed, turning to Ino. "You were great back there. We make a pretty good team, huh?" Ino, her face flushed from the exertion, smiled. "TCH. Of course we do. Don't get too cocky though." But her eyes sparkled with admiration. "We did good." Shikamaru walked over, yawning. "I'm just glad that's over. You two are definitely a handful, but we got through it." Naruto smiled, his thoughts turning to Ino. She was right. He didn't need to get cocky. But there was something undeniably special about the way they worked together. As they stood in the quiet aftermath of the battle, the bond between him and Ino grew just a little bit stronger. That night, after the mission was completed and they returned to camp to rest, Naruto found himself awake long after everyone else had gone to sleep. The fire crackled softly in the center of the camp, casting long shadows across the ground. He sat near the fire, staring into the flames, his thoughts racing. What was happening between him and Ino? Was it just the thrill of missions or something more? His musings were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Ino walking toward him, her silhouette bathed in the moonlight. "Ino?" Naruto asked, his voice a little surprised. "What's up?" Ino hesitated before sitting down beside him. "I couldn't sleep. Wanted to make sure you were okay." Naruto blinked, surprised. "Me? Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking, I guess." Ino tilted her head, glancing at him curiously. "Thinking about what?" Naruto paused for a moment, his usual bravado faltering. "About us. About the team. And, about you." Ino's breath hitched slightly, but she tried to mask it with a casual smile. "Me? What about me?" He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "I don't know, Ino. You've been different lately. I've been different. And I don't really get it, but I think I'm starting to feel something." Ino's heart skipped a beat. Could this be real? She had known it for a while, but hearing him say it, it made everything feel so real. "You're not the only one," she whispered, looking up at the stars. "I think I'm starting to feel something too." Naruto's gaze softened. The tension between them was palpable, and in that moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt comfortable, filled with understanding. Finally, Naruto spoke, his voice gentle. "You know, I don't know what this means, but maybe we should figure it out together. You and me." Ino smiled, her heart full. "Yeah, let's see where this goes." As the days passed, Naruto and Ino's relationship deepened. They continued to tackle difficult missions, always coming out stronger. Each challenge brought them closer, and their bond grew with every passing day. Their team dynamic had shifted. While Shikamaru remained his usual lazy self, he could see the subtle changes between Naruto and Ino. It wasn't obvious to the others yet, but Naruto and Ino had become more than just teammates. They were becoming something more. They were partners, both in battle and in life. The quiet moments of the night, shared around the campfire, were becoming more frequent as Naruto and Ino spent more time together. Their bond, once just a spark of admiration, had now turned into something they were both navigating carefully. Though their relationship remained unspoken, there was a growing understanding between them. They weren't just teammates anymore, they were beginning to rely on each other in ways they hadn't expected. Their next mission was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance job. They were to track down a rogue ninja who had been sighted near the border of the Fire Country and gather intelligence on his whereabouts. But as with most missions, nothing was as straightforward as it seemed. As Naruto, Ino, and Shikamaru traveled deeper into enemy territory, the tension in the air was palpable. Every rustling leaf, every snap of a twig underfoot, seemed like it could signal an ambush. But Naruto's sense of excitement never wavered. This is getting boring, he complained, his voice breaking the silence. Where's the action? Ino glanced at him, her expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Stop looking for trouble. You know better than anyone that we need to stay sharp. Shikamaru, who had been quiet up until then, yawned. TCH. You two are always so high-strung. It's just reconnaissance. Not everything is a fight. But Naruto wasn't so sure. There was something in the air, an uneasy calm that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. I don't know, guys, he said, his voice more serious now. Something feels off. Ino nodded, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. We'll stay alert. But remember, if things get ugly, we need to think first. We can't afford to make reckless moves. Naruto shot her a quick grin. I'll think before I act, just for you. Ino looked at him, her lips quirking into a small smile. Good. That's all I ask. It wasn't long before their instincts proved right. As the sun began to set, the team found themselves surrounded by a group of rogue ninjas, far more than they had expected. The enemy had clearly been lying in wait for them, and now they were trapped. Ino was the first to react, her hands forming the familiar seals for her mind transfer jutsu. Shikamaru, get ready to set up your shadows, she ordered, her voice steady. Shikamaru, despite his usual laziness, immediately got to work, his shadow spreading out beneath him like a dark wave. I can't hold them long, he muttered under his breath. We'll need to finish this quick. Naruto's heart raced, but he wasn't about to back down. Let's do this, he yelled, charging toward the nearest enemy ninja with his Rasengan spinning in his hand. But before he could engage, Ino's voice rang out again. Naruto, wait, we need to draw them out first. Naruto hesitated, then nodded. He slowed his pace, ready to listen this time. Ino's plan was simple but effective. They would rely on their teamwork to control the battlefield and isolate the enemy. Ino launched her mind transfer jutsu once again, taking control of one of the enemy ninjas. The rogue was forced to freeze, giving Shikamaru the opening he needed to trap a few more in his shadow bind. Naruto moved in swiftly, using his Rasengan to incapacitate the immobilized ninjas, while Ino coordinated their movements from the shadows, her eyes flicking from one position to the next. Everything was going according to plan, until a new figure emerged from the trees. A tall, cloaked man with a dark aura stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. So, the famed Team 10, the man sneered. I was wondering when you'd show up. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes, his mind already calculating their options. Who are you? He demanded. We don't have time for games. The rogue ninja chuckled. You'll have plenty of time to find out. But first, let's see if your little tricks can handle me. Before anyone could react, the man performed a series of rapid hand signs, and suddenly, a powerful wind jutsu surged through the air, blowing the team off their feet. Naruto scrambled to regain his balance, his eyes wide. What the hell was that? Ino's expression darkened. We're not dealing with an ordinary rogue. Shikamaru gritted his teeth. Great. Just what we needed. He quickly regained his footing, but the wind jutsu had scattered the team. They were now more vulnerable than ever. Stay together, Ino shouted, trying to control the situation. We need to take him down fast. The rogue ninja smirked, his chakra beginning to flare. I'll make sure you don't leave this forest alive. The battle with the rogue ninja raged on, each member of Team 10 pushed to their limits. Shikamaru's shadows couldn't keep up with the rogue's evasive movements, and Ino's mind transfer jutsu was countered by the enemy's ability to resist mental manipulation. Naruto, however, was in his element. His Rasengan collided with the rogue's wind jutsu, creating an explosion of chakra that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. But as much as he tried to fight back, the rogue ninja was relentless. It wasn't until Ino intervened, launching a diversion with her mind transfer jutsu once again, that Naruto saw his chance. With Ino's strategy buying him the time he needed, Naruto rushed forward, his Rasengan swirling in his hand. He focused all his energy into one final blow. I won't lose, Naruto yelled, determination burning in his eyes. In a blur of motion, Naruto slammed his Rasengan into the rogue's chest. The force of the attack sent the man sprawling to the ground, his chakra depleted. Ino and Shikamaru rushed to Naruto's side, their expressions serious but relieved. You did it, Naruto, Ino said, her voice filled with admiration. Naruto grinned, though he was breathing heavily from the fight. We did it. All of us. Shikamaru sighed, his eyes scanning the fallen enemy. TCH. That was a drag, but at least we finished it. As they stood over the defeated rogue ninja, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had tested more than just their abilities. It had tested their trust in each other, especially his trust in Ino. He hadn't realized until now how much he depended on her in battle. Her ability to think quickly, to lead, and to be there when he needed her, it made him appreciate her more than he had before. After the mission, Team 10 returned to the village, where they debriefed with the Hokage and received their next set of orders. It had been a hard-fought victory, but they had succeeded as a team. And yet, as the days passed and the mission was behind them, Naruto couldn't shake the thought of what had happened between him and Ino. It was more than just the heat of battle. He had relied on her. She had relied on him. And somewhere in the midst of the chaos, something had changed. One evening, as the sun set behind the Hokage monument, Naruto found himself standing at the edge of the village, looking out over the landscape. He wasn't sure what had brought him here, only that he needed to think. It wasn't long before he heard the soft rustling of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Ino walking toward him, her expression unreadable. Hey, she said softly, standing beside him. Mind if I join you? Naruto smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him at her presence. Not at all. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their recent mission hanging between them. Finally, Ino spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Naruto, do you think things have changed between us? After everything? Naruto looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. I think so, he said quietly. I think I've changed. And I think I care about you, Ino. Ino's gaze softened, her lips curving into a faint smile. I care about you too, Naruto. More than I ever expected. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled with understanding and something more. The connection between them had deepened, and in that quiet moment, they both realized something. This was only the beginning. The days following their quiet confession by the Hokage monument felt like a delicate balance between normalcy and something new, something exciting yet fragile. As much as they tried to carry on with their everyday duties, neither Naruto nor Ino could shake the growing connection between them. The bond that had always existed between them, first as teammates and then as something more, had shifted, becoming something neither of them had expected but both of them welcomed. Their training sessions were no longer just about perfecting techniques or completing missions. They were moments where their growing relationship flourished. Naruto, usually boisterous and impulsive, was more thoughtful in his approach when they trained together. He didn't want to mess up, didn't want to disappoint her. Ino, on the other hand, seemed to trust him more with each passing day. Her sharp mind and calculated nature now had someone she could rely on without hesitation, someone who would fight for her just as fiercely as she fought for him. The calm didn't last long. As is often the case for ninjas, life was a constant whirlwind of missions and danger. Soon, Team 10 found themselves on a high-stakes mission, tracking down a rogue ninja who had stolen a powerful forbidden jutsu scroll from the hidden mist village. The stakes were high, and it was a race against time to stop the rogue ninja from using the scroll's dangerous techniques to wreak havoc. Naruto, Ino, and Shikamaru had prepared for days. Their plan was clear: infiltrate the rogue's hideout, retrieve the scroll, and neutralize the threat before it could cause any harm. It sounded straightforward enough, but Ino knew better than to assume anything in the world of ninjas. As they made their way to the hideout, Ino found herself glancing at Naruto more often than usual. It wasn't the first time her gaze lingered on him, but now it had more meaning. She wondered if he was noticing the subtle change in their interactions. The way they communicated without words, the way their trust had grown, and how, despite the dangers ahead, she felt more grounded with him by her side. Shikamaru, ever the strategist, spoke up, his voice bringing her back to the present. We'll need to split up. I'll take the west side and provide support with my shadows. Ino, you cover the east. Naruto, try not to rush in headfirst, okay? Naruto grinned, his usual bravado shining through. Come on, Shikamaru, I'll be fine. You just worry about the shadows. Ino shot him a look, raising an eyebrow. As much as I'd love to let you do whatever you want, I'll need your help to get through this. Follow my lead, Naruto. Naruto felt a spark of determination in his chest, knowing that Ino's words weren't just a suggestion, they were a challenge. He couldn't afford to let her down. All right, I'll follow your lead, but only if I get to do the fun part. Ino couldn't help but smile at his energy. You're impossible, she muttered under her breath, but her voice lacked the usual irritation it would have held in the past. She was beginning to like this side of him. When they arrived at the rogue ninja's hideout, it was eerily quiet. The building was old and weathered, tucked away in a secluded part of the forest. Ino felt the tension in the air, the kind that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She glanced at Naruto, who was already grinning like he was ready to charge in. Ino, Shikamaru whispered from behind them. Let's stay calm. We can't afford to be reckless. Ino nodded, her expression serious. We'll get this done. Just stick to the plan. They split up as planned, Shikamaru moving into position to provide cover, and Ino taking the east side, where they suspected the rogue ninja might be hiding. Naruto, true to form, couldn't help but move ahead of the others, following his instincts more than the carefully laid out strategy. But as Ino entered the building, she felt a jolt of unease, a presence she hadn't anticipated. She paused, listening carefully, before she turned to find Naruto standing a few paces behind her, his face set with determination. What's wrong, Ino? She eyed him with a mixture of annoyance and relief. Stay close. Something's off. Before either could react, the ground beneath them began to shake, and several rogue ninjas emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. The rogue ninja they were after wasn't alone. The fight that ensued was intense. Shikamaru's shadow bind kept some of the enemies at bay, but there were too many of them for him to control alone. Ino immediately launched her mind transfer jutsu, taking control of one of the enemy ninjas long enough to throw them off balance. Naruto, now, Ino yelled, her voice sharp with authority. Naruto didn't need any more encouragement. He charged forward, his Rasengan forming in his palm as he crashed into one of the rogue ninjas, knocking him out cold. He didn't have time to savor the victory, though, there were more enemies to face. Ino's strategy was quick and efficient. She guided Naruto through the fight, directing his movements and using her mind transfer jutsu to disable any rogue ninja who got too close. Her precision and quick thinking saved them both several times, but Naruto's raw power and quick reflexes kept the tide from turning against them. Amidst the chaos, Ino couldn't help but marvel at how well they were working together. She had always admired his strength, but now, she saw a different side of him. He wasn't just the loud, brash ninja charging into the fray, he was her partner. And she realized, for the first time, how much she truly relied on him. Watch out! Naruto yelled, seeing an enemy ninja coming up behind her. Without thinking, he leapt into action, knocking the rogue ninja aside just in time. Ino looked at him, a fleeting expression of gratitude crossing her face. Thanks. Naruto grinned. Don't mention it. Just don't get yourself caught, okay? With a final push, the last of the rogue ninjas was subdued. The battle was over, and Team 10 had emerged victorious once again. However, as they surveyed the aftermath, Ino couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had been more than just a success. It had tested them, both as a team and as something more. A quiet moment amidst the chaos. As the sun began to set on their mission, the team made their way back to the village. The tension from the battle had faded, replaced by the familiar sense of camaraderie that always followed a successful mission. Ino and Naruto walked side by side, their steps in sync without even trying. Shikamaru, ever the pragmatist, fell behind them, clearly lost in thought. Another mission down, he muttered. And we still have to deal with the aftermath. I swear, the work never ends. Naruto laughed, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, but at least we made it through. And we're stronger because of it, right? Ino glanced at him, her heart swelling with something she couldn't quite name. Yeah, she agreed softly. We are. There was a long pause, a space between them that held the weight of their unspoken feelings. Neither of them needed to say anything more. The bond they shared was stronger than any words could convey. As they neared the village gates, Naruto turned to her, his usual mischievous grin making a reappearance. So, what's next, Ino? Got any more plans for me? Ino rolled her eyes, but there was no denying the smile tugging at her lips. I'm sure you'll find a way to make things interesting. Naruto chuckled, the sound easy and full of warmth. I always do. Their journey, both as ninjas and as a couple, was just beginning. With each challenge they faced, their bond grew stronger. The road ahead would be filled with more missions, more obstacles, and more moments that would test their relationship. But with each passing day, Naruto and Ino knew one thing for sure: they were ready for whatever came next. Team 10's next mission was unlike anything they had faced before. The Hidden Leaf Village had received word of a mysterious organization that had been destabilizing neighboring countries by launching covert attacks. They were rumored to be hiding out in the Land of Iron, a place known for its neutral stance in the ninja world. The goal was clear: infiltrate their base, retrieve any intelligence, and neutralize the threat before it escalated further. But the task wasn't as simple as it sounded. This was an enemy whose methods were unknown, and they could strike at any moment. The journey to the Land of Iron was long and perilous, and the further they went, the more the tension between Naruto and Ino grew. There were quiet moments between them, moments when their hands brushed against each other or when their eyes met for a second longer than necessary. It wasn't just the physical closeness that made things complicated, it was the emotional weight they carried. Both of them felt the undeniable pull, but neither was sure what to make of it. The night before the mission. The night before they were supposed to enter enemy territory, the team camped under the stars. Shikamaru had set up their usual watch, and Ino, as always, took a moment to meditate and calm her mind. She knew what was coming: the battle, the danger, but this time, there was more at stake. Her heart wasn't just invested in the mission anymore. It was invested in Naruto. He had become more than just a teammate, he was her anchor. But she was afraid to voice it. What if it changed everything? What if the dynamics of their team, of their relationship, shifted in a way neither of them could handle? She sat away from the campfire, trying to clear her mind when Naruto approached her. His silhouette against the moonlight made her heart skip a beat, and despite herself, she couldn't stop her cheeks from flushing. Hey, Ino, he said, his voice low. Got a minute? Ino nodded, her pulse quickening. Sure, what's up? Naruto sat down beside her, closer than she expected. The warmth of his presence was comforting, yet there was an unspoken tension in the air. I've been thinking about tomorrow. It's gonna be dangerous. Really dangerous. And I don't want to leave things unsaid, you know. Ino turned to look at him, sensing the seriousness in his tone. What do you mean? I mean, Naruto paused, clearly struggling to find the right words. I've always been the kind of guy who rushes into things, never thinking them through. But I want you to know, you're important to me, Ino. You always have been. His words left her breathless. She wasn't prepared for this. She didn't think he would say it. The vulnerability in his eyes made her heart ache. I know, she whispered. You don't have to say it. I've known for a while. Naruto blinked, surprised by her honesty. You have. Ino nodded, her voice steady despite the emotion swirling inside her. Yeah, I just didn't know if it was the right time to say it out loud. Things are complicated, Naruto. But I care about you more than I thought I would. The moment stretched between them, each of them processing the weight of the words they had just shared. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping gestures. Just a quiet understanding, a bond that had grown stronger with every mission they faced. Naruto smiled softly, his usual mischievous grin replaced with something more sincere. We'll get through this. Together. Ino smiled back, her heart lighter than it had been in days. Yeah, together. The mission begins. The next morning, the team entered the land of iron under the cover of darkness. Shikamaru's tactics were flawless, as always, and they moved with precision, taking care not to alert the enemy. They found the hideout in the middle of a dense forest, camouflaged so well it could have been missed by anyone who wasn't looking for it. As they approached, Ino felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Something didn't feel right. She wasn't sure what it was, but her instincts were on high alert. She glanced at Naruto, who gave her a reassuring nod. It was a silent promise, a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. They infiltrated the hideout silently, moving through the shadows with ease. But as they reached the central chamber, they were met with an unexpected ambush. The enemy had been waiting for them. A group of elite mercenaries emerged from the shadows, surrounding the team with weapons drawn. Well, one of the mercenaries said with a cruel smile. Looks like we have some visitors. You're far too late to stop us. Shikamaru was already calculating their odds, his brow furrowed in concentration. We need to move quickly. They've got the advantage here. Ino quickly assessed the situation, her mind working faster than her heart was racing. Naruto, we need to take out the ones on the left flank first. Shikamaru, can you create a diversion? I'll handle it, Shikamaru replied. Ino, be careful. Ino nodded, already preparing her mind transfer jutsu. She couldn't afford to hesitate. With Naruto and Shikamaru's support, they had a chance to defeat the mercenaries. But she knew it wouldn't be easy. A heart-pounding battle. The fight was chaotic. Shikamaru's shadows darted between mercenaries, binding them long enough for Ino to take control of one of their minds. Naruto was everywhere, his Rasengan blasting through enemies, his shouts of triumph ringing through the air. Ino stayed close to him, guiding his movements with sharp precision. Watch out! Ino shouted as a mercenary with a sword aimed for Naruto's back. Without thinking, Naruto spun around and deflected the strike with his own kunai, sending the enemy flying. His eyes locked with hers, a moment of silent gratitude passing between them. But there was no time to savor it. The battle was far from over. Ino's mind transfer jutsu was working, but the mercenaries were too skilled. Every time she took control of one, another would take their place, each more ruthless than the last. Naruto was starting to tire, his movements slowing, but his determination never wavered. Ino could feel it too, the exhaustion creeping up on her, but she refused to give in. She had to keep fighting. They had to win. A dangerous decision. The tide of the battle shifted when the leader of the mercenaries stepped forward. He was tall, with a calm, calculated demeanor that sent a chill through Ino's spine. He had been watching the fight from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Enough, the leader said, his voice low but commanding. I'll deal with these pests myself. The mercenary leader launched himself at Naruto with deadly speed, forcing Ino to act quickly. Without thinking, she threw herself into the path of the attack, using her mind transfer jutsu to take control of one of the mercenaries' blades. But before she could strike, the leader countered with a swift kick, sending her flying backward. Ino! Naruto shouted, his voice filled with panic. But Ino's eyes were already focused. With the mercenary's sword in her control, she lashed out, aiming for the leader's chest. The blade connected, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He grinned, preparing for the final blow. Naruto's blood ran cold. Ino! In that moment, everything went quiet. Ino's face was calm, but there was a fierce determination in her eyes. She wasn't going to let him hurt anyone she cared about. Not again. With a roar, Naruto lunged forward, his Rasengan charging in his hand. He collided with the leader just as the final blow was about to land, sending both of them crashing to the ground in a burst of energy. Ino's breath caught in her throat as she watched Naruto fight with everything he had. His body was battered, but his will was unbroken. And as he stood over the fallen leader, bloodied but triumphant, Ino realized something: there was nothing they couldn't face as long as they were together. After the battle, as the dust settled and the last of the mercenaries were taken care of, Team 10 stood victorious. But the price of victory was clear. Ino had been injured in the fight, though nothing too severe. Still, she felt a pang of guilt for what had happened. Naruto approached her, his face a mix of concern and relief. "You okay?" he asked softly, his hand resting on her shoulder. Ino nodded, though her body ached. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a scratch." Naruto's eyes softened. "You scared me back there." Ino smiled, though it was tinged with weariness. "I know, but I couldn't let you fight alone." He stepped closer, his expression earnest. "You don't have to. We're a team, Ino. Always." And in that moment, she knew. No matter what dangers awaited them, they would face them together. Because together, they were unstoppable. The mission was over, but the journey had left its marks on all of them. Naruto, though physically battered, was in high spirits, his usual grin plastered across his face. Shikamaru, as always, was grumbling about how things had gotten too troublesome, and Ino, despite her physical exhaustion, felt a strange sense of relief. They had survived, and they had done it together. But the real weight of the mission wasn't just about defeating their enemies, it was about the unspoken emotions that hung between her and Naruto. Ino couldn't help but replay the moment in her mind when she had thrown herself in front of Naruto to protect him. It wasn't the first time she'd fought for him, but it felt different this time. She had put everything on the line, not just for their mission, but because she cared for him. As they made their way back to the village, Ino walked beside Naruto, her steps light but her thoughts heavy. She hadn't realized how much she had come to depend on him, not just in battle, but emotionally as well. Every time he smiled or cracked a joke, it was like a weight lifted from her shoulders. But every time they fought side by side, it was clear how much stronger they were together. Naruto noticed her quiet demeanor. "You okay, Ino?" he asked, his voice soft and genuine. "You're pretty quiet all of a sudden." Ino smiled faintly, turning her head to meet his gaze. "Just thinking," she replied. "About everything that happened. It's a lot to process." Naruto nodded, his grin softening. "Yeah, that last fight, it was intense. But you were amazing out there. I could never have handled it without you." Ino's heart fluttered at his words. "You weren't so bad yourself, Naruto." There was a brief silence as they walked, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet understanding between them, something that had grown with each passing day. Despite everything they had been through, they knew they were becoming more than just teammates. Back at the village, when they finally arrived back in Konoha, the team went their separate ways for a much-needed rest. Shikamaru immediately headed to the nearest place to get some sleep, mumbling about how tired he was. Naruto, however, hung back for a moment, glancing at Ino with a mischievous grin. "Hey, Ino, do you wanna grab some ramen?" he asked, his voice hopeful. Ino paused, surprised by his invitation. It had become a routine for her to grab a meal with him after missions, but today felt different. There was an almost nervous energy to him that she hadn't seen before. I guess I could eat, she replied with a teasing smile. But only if you promise not to eat all the ramen this time. Naruto gave her a dramatic, offended look. Hey, I don't eat all the ramen. I just. Ino chuckled. I'm joking, Naruto. He grinned, clearly relieved, and they made their way to their favorite ramen shop. As they sat down, the conversation was light, filled with jokes and teasing, but there was something underneath that both of them were trying to ignore. The tension from the mission still lingered between them, a quiet undercurrent to their casual conversation. As they ate, Naruto couldn't help but glance at Ino, noticing the way the dim light of the shop softened her features. She was beautiful, in a way that was hard to define. It wasn't just her appearance, it was the strength in her eyes, the confidence in her every movement. She was a force of nature, and Naruto had always admired that. But now, it was different. There was something more to it. Ino caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. What's with the look, Naruto? Got something on your mind? Naruto immediately looked away, flustered. Nothing. Just thinking about how awesome this ramen is, that's all. Ino smirked. Sure. The moment passed, but both of them felt the weight of it. They were standing at the edge of something neither of them knew how to navigate. The bond they shared had grown stronger, more intimate, but they hadn't yet found the courage to fully explore what it meant. A test of trust. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Missions, training, and the usual hustle of being a ninja. But despite their busy schedules, there was a change in the air whenever Naruto and Ino were together. Their interactions were more comfortable, but also more loaded with meaning. Small touches here and there, his hand brushing against hers during a mission, his voice softer when he spoke to her. But things were about to get more complicated. Team 10 was assigned to a high-risk mission, one that involved infiltrating a criminal organization that had been causing chaos in the Land of Fire. This was the kind of mission that could turn deadly in an instant. It wasn't just about taking out the enemy, it was about extracting crucial information to prevent further bloodshed. The mission took them deep into enemy territory, where they had to rely on stealth and cunning rather than brute force. It was the kind of operation that tested a ninja's resolve, one that demanded complete trust in one another. Shikamaru, of course, was the strategist, and his plans were impeccable. But this mission had one major difference. Ino and Naruto would have to work more closely than ever before, especially since they had to infiltrate the enemy's compound together. As they approached their target, Naruto found himself looking over at Ino with a new sense of admiration. She was calm, focused, and serious, a stark contrast to her usual playful demeanor. She had always been capable, but now, there was a new depth to her. Ino, Naruto said, his voice serious. You good? Ino glanced at him, her face softening just slightly. I'm fine, Naruto. Just stay sharp, okay? He nodded, but something about her tone struck him. It was the first time she hadn't teased him, the first time she hadn't smiled in that easy way that always made him feel better. There was something different now. More weight in her words. She wasn't just worried about the mission. She was worried about them. Infiltration and danger. The compound was heavily guarded, and getting in wasn't going to be easy. They slipped past the outer walls under the cover of night, using their skills to avoid detection. Shikamaru's shadows extended, creating diversions, while Ino and Naruto moved through the facility silently, side by side. They eventually reached the inner chamber, where the enemy leader was rumored to be hiding. It was here that everything would come to a head. Suddenly, they were surrounded. The air thickened with tension as masked men stepped from the shadows, weapons drawn. Thought you could sneak in here unnoticed? The leader of the organization sneered, stepping into view. You're far too late. The trap was sprung, and Team 10 was caught. Naruto, his body tense, turned to Ino, his eyes narrowing. Stay close, he said. Ino nodded, her heart pounding, but her mind clear. Don't worry, I've got this. Without a moment's hesitation, she activated her mind transfer jutsu, aiming to take control of one of the enemies. But the enemy leader was faster, slashing through the air with lightning speed, forcing Ino to leap back just in time. Naruto was already in action, his Rasengan swirling in his palm as he charged forward, determined to take down as many enemies as possible. The battle was fierce, their moves a blur of speed and power. But the true test wasn't just their physical strength, it was their ability to rely on one another. Ino's mind focused as she transferred into one of the enemy's bodies, using him to strike at another attacker. Naruto, to your left. She called out. Naruto turned just in time, his Rasengan hitting the enemy hard, sending him flying. But there were too many of them. Shikamaru's voice crackled through their earpieces. I'm sending reinforcements. Hold on. As the fight raged on, Ino felt a sense of calm amidst the chaos. Naruto was beside her, fighting with everything he had, and so was she. Their synchronization was seamless. They were a team, and nothing could break them apart. Just when it seemed like they might be overwhelmed, the tide turned. Shikamaru's reinforcements arrived, tipping the scales in their favor. The enemies were quickly subdued, and the mission was a success. But the real victory was not just in the physical battle, it was in the trust that had been solidified between Naruto and Ino. As they regrouped after the fight, Naruto turned to her, his face covered in sweat and dirt, but his grin wide as ever. See, I told you we'd make it through. Ino smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Yeah, you were right. But in that moment, Naruto's voice softened. Ino, you're not just my teammate. You're everything. The words hung in the air, powerful and true. Ino felt her heart leap in her chest as she stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his. I feel the same way, Naruto, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the noise of the village around them. And in that moment, amidst the chaos and danger they had just faced, they both knew one thing for sure, they had each other. And together, they could face anything. The Chunin exams were one of the most important moments for Naruto, and they're an opportunity to explore the competitive but deeply personal side of his relationship with Ino. Instead of focusing just on Naruto's rivalry with Sasuke, we can develop the relationship between Naruto and Ino through their teamwork and personal growth during this challenging event. The Chunin exams begin. The Chunin exams were fast approaching, and the atmosphere in the Hidden Leaf village was tense with excitement. Naruto, as usual, was enthusiastic and ready to prove himself. But this time, he wasn't just fighting for recognition, he was fighting for Ino, and for the bond that had grown between them. He had made it his mission to be the best not just for himself, but for her as well. Ino, on the other hand, was feeling more pressure than usual. She had always been a confident and proud shinobi, but now, with Naruto by her side, her emotions were clouded with something new. Every time she saw him, her heart would race, and every mission they shared left her wanting more than just victory. During the preliminary rounds of the exams, Naruto and Ino faced different opponents, but their connection was more important than the battles themselves. Ino, having always been a skilled strategist, was calm and composed as she entered her match. However, she had never underestimated the importance of teamwork, and Naruto's presence in her mind was like a silent reassurance. When it came time for Naruto's match, he was facing an intimidating opponent. The crowd was on edge, especially with his reputation for recklessness. But Ino was watching closely, her eyes filled with determination. You've got this, Naruto. You always do, she whispered under her breath. As the fight dragged on, Naruto found himself struggling. But then, as if on instinct, Ino's voice broke through his thoughts. You can do this, Naruto. We're in this together. Remember how we've always fought side by side. Her words triggered something inside him. The usual arrogance of being alone on the battlefield shifted, and he realized that he wasn't fighting alone. He fought not just for himself, but for the one person who had always been there for him, Ino. With newfound strength, Naruto unleashed a powerful Rasengan that knocked his opponent out cold, securing his victory. But instead of celebrating, he turned to the stands, where Ino was cheering him on. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they shared a bond stronger than ever before. The Forest of Death revised. The next phase of the Chunin exams, the Forest of Death, was one of the most dangerous and intense experiences of any young ninja's life. This was where survival was key, and bonds were tested in ways that no one could anticipate. During this stage of the exams, Naruto and Ino found themselves working together more than ever before. Shikamaru, although an essential part of the team, wasn't as focused on the immediate threats due to his tendency to overthink. This left Naruto and Ino as the primary line of defense for their team. In the Forest of Death, it wasn't just the other competitors they had to worry about, it was the terrifying creatures that roamed the area, as well as the deadly traps set by the proctors. As they traveled deeper into the forest, Naruto and Ino found themselves face to face with a group of rogue ninjas. The battle was intense, but Ino's leadership skills came to the forefront as she coordinated their attacks. As Naruto fought beside her, he noticed how effortlessly they moved together. She wasn't just giving commands, she was protecting him, covering his weaknesses just as much as he was protecting her. At one point, Ino took a hit meant for Naruto, her body flinging backward from the force of the attack. The sight of her lying injured on the ground nearly broke him. He rushed to her side, panic in his eyes. Ino, no, don't do this, Naruto shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. But Ino, even through the pain, smiled at him. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm fine, I'll be okay. He didn't understand how she could be so calm. But then, he realized that she was always calm when it came to him. She trusted him, and he trusted her. With renewed strength, Naruto fought back with everything he had, his Rasengan obliterating their enemies in an instant. The fight was over, but the weight of what had just happened hung heavy between them. Ino's injury wasn't serious, but it was a reminder of how far they were willing to go for each other. They had crossed a line, one that neither of them could ignore anymore. They weren't just teammates, they were something deeper. Sasuke's betrayal and Naruto's determination revised. The Chunin exams reached their climax, but the true test of their bond came when Sasuke betrayed the village and left for Orochimaru's influence. The mission to bring Sasuke back became the ultimate test of teamwork, friendship, and unspoken emotions. When the news broke that Sasuke had defected, Ino and Naruto both took it hard, though for different reasons. Ino had always seen Sasuke as a rival, but his defection made her realize how fragile their bonds truly were. The village was torn, and Team 10 was no exception. But despite the chaos, she found herself turning to Naruto. Naruto, of course, was devastated by Sasuke's decision to leave, but he wasn't going to give up. He would bring Sasuke back, no matter the cost. And Ino, she was determined to stand by him. She couldn't let him fight alone. She couldn't let him go through this without her. As the journey to find Sasuke began, Ino and Naruto's relationship deepened even further. They fought side by side, not just against enemies, but against the overwhelming weight of their own feelings. Each battle, each moment of pain, only brought them closer. During the final confrontation with Orochimaru's forces, it was Ino who pulled Naruto back from the brink of despair. Seeing the emotional toll this mission was taking on him, Ino grabbed his arm, looking him straight in the eye. Naruto, I know this hurts. I know it's hard, but I'm with you. We're in this together. We can't lose Sasuke, but we won't lose ourselves in the process. You're not alone in this. Her words were like a lifeline. Naruto, always determined but often isolated in his quest for recognition, finally understood. He wasn't alone. Ino was right there, just as she always had been. Together, they were stronger than ever. The final push. Saving Sasuke. The final push to save Sasuke became the turning point in Naruto and Ino's relationship. With the help of the entire team, they confronted Orochimaru and his followers in a brutal battle that pushed them to their limits. It was the hardest fight any of them had ever faced, but the one thing that kept Naruto going was knowing that Ino was beside him, just as determined as he was to save their friend. Ino, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. As they stood together against Orochimaru, she realized just how far she had come, not just as a ninja, but as someone who had found someone she could rely on, someone who relied on her. As the dust settled and Sasuke was finally freed from Orochimaru's influence, Naruto and Ino stood side by side, breathing heavily but with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Naruto turned to Ino, his voice quiet. "We did it. Together." Ino nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "Yeah, together." And in that moment, they both knew that this was only the beginning of something much greater. After Sasuke's departure, Naruto and Ino, along with the rest of their friends, are forced to confront the growing instability in the village. During this time, a new challenge emerges, the search for Tsunade, the legendary Sannin, to become the new Hokage. For Naruto and Ino, it's not just about finding Tsunade, it's also about what lies ahead for them personally and as a team. A shared goal. Naruto and Ino were assigned to the team sent out to find Tsunade, alongside Jiraiya, who would act as their guide. At first, Ino was nervous. Traveling with Jiraiya was bound to lead to chaos, he was a master at causing trouble. But Naruto was different. His usual wildness seemed to have more direction now, especially after everything that had happened with Sasuke. Ino couldn't help but notice the shift in him, how much more mature he had become. As they traveled together, the bonds between Naruto and Ino deepened. Ino found herself constantly by his side, offering support during their training sessions. Naruto would teach her new techniques, but Ino would often surprise him with her own skills, her precision in battle impressing him more than ever. Ino's struggles with her feelings. However, things weren't always smooth. As the journey progressed, Ino found herself struggling with her feelings. She had grown so close to Naruto, and the affection she had for him was now undeniable. But there was always a fear in her mind. What if Naruto didn't feel the same way? What if this bond they had built over time was nothing more than friendship to him? One evening, as they sat around the campfire, Ino couldn't help but ask, "Naruto, do you ever think about the future? After all of this, what happens once everything calms down?" Naruto, who had been staring at the flames, looked up at her with a smile. "I think about the future every day. I think about what kind of Hokage I want to be, but right now, I'm focused on making sure I don't let anyone down. And, I'm always happy to have you by my side." Ino's heart skipped a beat at his words. It wasn't the confession she'd been hoping for, but it was something deeper. The way he valued her, the way he trusted her, it was more than she could have asked for. She smiled back at him, her chest tightening in a way she wasn't prepared for. "I'll always be here, Naruto." The battle with Orochimaru's followers. Eventually, their search for Tsunade led them to a confrontation with Orochimaru's forces. The fight that ensued was intense, and Ino found herself alongside Naruto as they battled their enemies. It was a test of their teamwork and their ability to trust each other in the heat of the moment. Naruto fought fiercely, but Ino was right there beside him, using her mind transfer jutsu to incapacitate enemies and provide backup. There was one moment when Ino found herself caught in a trap, and it was Naruto's quick thinking that saved her. He knocked down an enemy just in time, pulling Ino from danger. "Ino, don't scare me like that," Naruto said, panting heavily as he helped her up. Ino looked at him, her voice soft. "I wasn't planning on it." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. In the middle of the chaos, Naruto reached out to gently touch her cheek, his thumb brushing over the bruise she had sustained earlier in the fight. "I don't want to lose you," he confessed, his voice quieter than usual. Ino's heart raced, and she nodded. I don't want to lose you either, Naruto. It was a moment that lingered between them, unspoken but understood. In the midst of the war, they had found something even more powerful, a connection that no battle could destroy. As the years went by, the pain of Sasuke's departure still lingered, but Naruto was determined. He would bring Sasuke back, no matter what. When the opportunity arose to form a team to retrieve Sasuke, Naruto, Ino, and the rest of their friends were once again faced with an impossible mission. This time, however, Naruto's resolve was even more powerful, and Ino could see it clearly in his eyes. He wasn't fighting just for Sasuke anymore, he was fighting for all of them, for their bond, for the future they all hoped for. A fateful decision. As Team 7 Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi ventured into the dangerous terrain to find Sasuke, Ino was part of the backup team tasked with supporting them from the rear. But something unexpected happened. Ino was assigned to work closely with Naruto. Despite her initial worry, Ino found that being with Naruto on the mission felt different this time. The two of them had become a well-oiled machine, moving together with ease. Whether it was using her jutsu to provide surveillance or Naruto's Rasengan clearing obstacles, they worked seamlessly. But it was during a particularly brutal fight that Ino realized just how deep her feelings for Naruto had grown. They were in the midst of a battle with a particularly powerful rogue ninja when Ino was struck, falling to the ground. Don't worry about me, she shouted, trying to push herself up, but pain surged through her body. Naruto, his face already filled with concern, rushed to her side. I'm not leaving you behind, Ino. We're a team, remember? Ino looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. This was more than just a promise to a teammate. It was a promise to someone who truly cared. Naruto. I know. With a swift movement, Naruto protected her and defeated their enemy. Ino watched, in awe, as Naruto's determination never wavered. But it wasn't just his strength that made her heart swell, it was the fact that he was willing to risk everything for the people he cared about. And that, above all else, made her believe in their bond. Sasuke's return and Naruto's growth. When the mission reached its climax, Naruto finally came face to face with Sasuke in a battle that would shake the very foundation of their relationship. It was a battle of ideals, of dreams, and of broken bonds. But through all the pain and the devastation, Ino stood by Naruto's side. She had always known he was strong, but now, more than ever, she saw the depth of his heart. He wasn't fighting just to win, he was fighting to save Sasuke, to save the bonds they had shared, and to protect the future they had all dreamed of. After Sasuke's return to the village and the battle came to an end, Naruto and Ino found themselves alone for a moment, catching their breath. I never want to go through something like that again, Naruto said, his voice low. Ino nodded, walking over to him. I know. But we're still here. And that's what matters. Naruto smiled softly, his gaze warm. Yeah, we're still here. And we always will be. Ino felt something stir in her chest, something stronger than ever before. Maybe it wasn't just about protecting the village. Maybe it was about protecting the person standing next to you. And with Naruto by her side, she knew they could face anything, together. The tension of the Fourth Great Ninja War loomed over the Hidden Leaf Village and the entire ninja world. The allied shinobi forces were gathering, and each village prepared to fight the ultimate battle against the forces of Akatsuki and the revived armies of the dead. Naruto, now more powerful than ever before, was determined to protect everyone, but there was one person who mattered most, Ino. As the war broke out, Naruto and Ino were deployed to the front lines. Their task was to break through the enemy's ranks, cut off the reinforcements, and prevent any unnecessary bloodshed. The war was unlike anything they had ever faced, gruesome and unforgiving, but there was a shared determination among the shinobi to protect their loved ones. Ino, who had already been tested by the death of so many comrades in previous missions, found herself standing strong alongside Naruto. The fear she had felt in earlier battles was replaced with a newfound courage. Every time she fought by his side, she felt more invincible, more alive, and more connected to the person who had become her anchor. Their teamwork was near perfect. Ino's sensory jutsu worked seamlessly with Naruto's raw power. She would detect the movements of the enemy before they even had a chance to react, and Naruto's strength would tear through them like a force of nature. The two of them were an unstoppable duo. In the heat of battle, when moments of calm would settle, there was always the chance for a quiet exchange of words. One night, after a brutal confrontation with some of the revived Kage, Ino found herself alone with Naruto in the aftermath, as they both surveyed the destruction around them. Naruto was silent for a long time, staring at the horizon. But Ino could tell there was something weighing heavily on him. She had always been able to sense his emotions, even when he tried to hide them. Ino walked up beside him, resting her hand on his shoulder. Naruto, you don't have to do this alone. You have us. You have me, she said softly. Naruto turned to her, his blue eyes meeting her gaze with a vulnerability he rarely showed. I know. I've always known that, but this time, it feels different. This war is bigger than all of us. I don't want to lose anyone else. Ino's heart clenched. She could feel his pain, his fear, and she wanted nothing more than to reassure him. But she also knew she couldn't do it by just saying empty words. There was something deeper, something that had been growing inside her for years now, that she couldn't ignore anymore. I don't want to lose you, either, she confessed, her voice quiet but firm. Naruto blinked, taken aback by her admission. He hadn't expected it, but in that moment, it felt like a weight had been lifted. He reached out, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin. Ino, I've always cared about you. You've been there for me when I needed someone the most. Ino smiled softly, her eyes sparkling. I've always been here, Naruto. I always will be. There was no more need for words. Ino leaned forward, her lips brushing against his in a soft, tender kiss. It wasn't rushed or filled with passion, it was a promise. A promise that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. The kiss was brief, but it lingered between them, solidifying the bond that had always existed, now deepened by the gravity of war and the weight of their shared feelings. As the war escalated, the forces of Akatsuki, led by Madara Uchiha and Obito, unleashed the reanimation jutsu, bringing the dead back to life as powerful warriors. Neji Hyuga, a fellow member of Team 10, was brought back in this form, and it shook everyone to the core. Ino was heartbroken when she saw Neji fighting for the enemy. She had always respected him, even though they had often been rivals. She never expected to be faced with the painful task of fighting someone she once cared for. Yet, she remained strong, relying on her bond with Naruto to get through this emotional trial. Naruto, too, had his demons to face, especially with the revelation of the true identity of Madara Uchiha and the realization of how close the end of the world was. Ino, by his side, helped him focus. She understood his guilt, his anger, and his fear. But she also knew that despite all the tragedy, they had each other. During the battle, Neji ultimately sacrificed himself to protect his friends, leaving everyone in mourning. Ino, standing by Naruto, felt a deep sadness but also a realization, they had to fight for those who couldn't fight anymore. For Neji. For all the fallen shinobi. For their future. As the war reached its peak, the battle against Madara and Obito was inevitable. The two of them were powerful, determined to reshape the world in their image. The fight that followed was intense, every shinobi, every ally, every friend pushing their limits to protect their world. Ino, alongside Naruto, fought fiercely against the growing tide of enemies. With the power of the tailed beasts and the support of the allied shinobi forces, Naruto's chakra exploded, as he channeled the immense power needed to stand against Madara's power. Ino, as always, was by his side, her mind in constant motion as she used her sensory jutsu to assist him. Ino's role was not just one of combat. She kept everyone connected, focusing her abilities to sense the movements of the enemy and warn her comrades. She even worked to coordinate the attacks, helping lead the charge against the ever-growing darkness that Madara and Obito sought to unleash upon the world. During the final battle, when Naruto was struggling against Madara, Ino realized that it was time for them to push beyond their limits, to reach for a victory that would save not only their village but the entire world. With the support of her friends and her unwavering bond with Naruto, she helped facilitate the final push against Madara's influence. Naruto's ultimate victory against Madara marked the end of the war, but it wasn't the end of the journey for Naruto and Ino. As they stood in the aftermath of the war, exhausted, battered, but victorious, they looked to each other with a quiet understanding. Ino's hand found Naruto's, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. There was no need for more words. After everything they had been through together, they knew they had what it took to face whatever challenges the future held, together. The world was left in ruins after the war, but the allied shinobi forces, with Naruto at the forefront, began the long process of rebuilding. Naruto's dream of becoming Hokage was closer than ever, but now, there was a new dream forming, one where he could not only protect his village but create a better world for those he loved. Ino, too, had grown. She wasn't just a powerful ninja anymore, she was a leader in her own right, someone who had stood by Naruto through the darkest of times and helped light the path forward. Years later, as the village healed, Naruto and Ino found themselves in a quiet moment, away from the hustle and bustle of their duties. They stood on top of a hill, looking out over the village they had both fought for. The setting sun bathed the world in a warm, golden glow. Naruto, now the Hokage, turned to Ino, his expression softening. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said quietly. Ino smiled, her heart full of warmth. "You don't have to thank me, Naruto. I've always been by your side. Always will be." Naruto smiled back, his blue eyes reflecting the setting sun. And as they stood there together, side by side, they knew that this was just the beginning. They had faced the darkest of battles, but now, they would fight for a future filled with hope. Naruto and Ino stood amidst the destruction, the echoes of war still ringing in their ears. The battle had been long, hard, and filled with unimaginable losses. But the world had finally seen peace after years of fighting. The war was over, and now the work of rebuilding began. Despite the overwhelming sense of victory, the weight of the lives lost and the scars left behind lingered in the air. Ino stood silently beside Naruto, her hand resting on his shoulder. She could feel the exhaustion in his muscles, the weariness that clung to him. Yet, there was something else in his eyes, a quiet determination that refused to falter. It was a side of Naruto she had seen before, but this time, it was different. The burden of the world now rested on his shoulders, and Ino knew he was feeling the weight of it all. She gently squeezed his shoulder. "We made it, Naruto," she said softly. He turned to look at her, his face tired but filled with the warmth that she had come to rely on. "Yeah, we did. But it's not over yet. There's still a lot to do." Ino nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The village needed to be rebuilt, the families needed to heal, and there were still so many questions about the future of their world. But for now, in this moment, they were allowed to take a breath. As they stood together, the first rays of the setting sun cast a golden hue over the village. Naruto's face softened, and he took a step closer to Ino. For a moment, there were no words between them. The silence was comfortable, a testament to how far they had come. After everything they had been through, the hardships, the losses, the victories, this was the one constant, each other. "Hey, Ino," Naruto said quietly, his voice unusually soft. Ino turned to face him, raising an eyebrow. "What's up?" He hesitated for a moment, as if unsure how to say what was on his mind. Then, with a soft chuckle, he shook his head. I guess, I've been thinking a lot about the future. About what comes next. Ino raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. She simply waited for him to continue, knowing Naruto's thoughts weren't always easy to put into words. The world's changed, you know. He said, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. And I've changed too. But the one thing that's stayed the same is you. Ino's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always known Naruto was special, but hearing him say something so sincere left her momentarily speechless. You've been there for me from the very beginning, he continued. And I don't think I could have made it through any of this without you by my side. His words were simple, but they carried so much weight. Ino felt her chest tighten, her eyes flickering with emotion. She had always been by his side, but hearing him acknowledge it, hearing him say it out loud, was something she had never imagined would happen. For so long, she had wondered whether he truly understood how deeply she cared for him, and now, in this moment, she knew he did. You've always been there for me too, Naruto, Ino replied softly. Through everything, even when I didn't think I had the strength to go on. There was a long pause, and for a moment, Ino wasn't sure what to say next. But then, Naruto took a deep breath, his expression serious. I've been thinking, he started, his gaze never leaving hers. About what happens next, after all this. After the war is over and the village is rebuilt. Ino's heart fluttered in her chest. She knew where this was heading, but still, hearing him speak it out loud felt like a dream. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Naruto reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I mean, I don't want to do this alone anymore. I want to build something new. Something better. With you. Ino's breath caught in her throat. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. This wasn't the loud, brash Naruto she had first met. This was a man who had seen the depths of darkness, who had fought for peace, and who had learned the true meaning of connection. And now, he was standing here, telling her that he wanted a future with her. I want that too, Ino said, her voice trembling slightly. She felt her heart swell as Naruto's hand tightened around hers. Naruto's face lit up with a grin, a smile so wide and genuine that it could light up the darkest night. Really? Ino nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her own lips. Yeah, really. For a moment, neither of them said anything more. They didn't need to. They both understood what this meant. They had fought side by side, faced unimaginable challenges, and survived. But the true battle was still ahead, the one of creating a new world, a new future, together. As the sun set over the village, the two of them stood there, hands entwined, ready to face whatever came next. The following days were filled with a sense of purpose. While the village began the difficult task of rebuilding, Naruto and Ino worked tirelessly alongside their friends, helping to bring stability to their home. Naruto took on the responsibility of leadership with a newfound determination, though Ino could see the toll it was taking on him. But she was there, always by his side, supporting him as he had supported her so many times before. The months that followed were filled with changes. Ino, too, had taken on more responsibility within the village, overseeing medical operations and helping to heal those who had been wounded during the war. Despite the heavy workload, she always made time to be with Naruto, whether it was training together or simply enjoying quiet moments beneath the stars. One evening, after a long day, the two of them found themselves sitting on the roof of the Hokage's office, looking out over the village. The stars shone brightly in the sky, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of peace, a sense of calm that they hadn't known in a long while. Ino leaned against Naruto's shoulder, her eyes closed, as she enjoyed the stillness of the night. She had always admired the way Naruto looked at the world, with hope and determination. But now, she saw something else in his eyes, a quiet contentment, a peace that came from knowing they had faced the worst and emerged stronger because of it. I never thought this day would come, Ino murmured, her voice barely a whisper. What day? Naruto asked, turning to her with a confused smile. The day when we wouldn't be fighting anymore, she said, her tone tinged with both relief and sadness. When we could just be. Naruto looked at her, his expression softening. Yeah, I guess that's true. But even if the fighting's over, I think we'll always have something to fight for. And that's you. Ino's heart swelled, and she turned her face up to his, her eyes shining with emotion. Naruto. He smiled again, his hand gently brushing her hair. I've always known I wanted to protect the village. But now, I know what matters most. It's protecting you. Ino smiled, her heart full. She knew, in that moment, that this was just the beginning of their new journey. Together, they would face whatever came next, stronger than ever before. And as the night stretched on, the two of them sat there, side by side, knowing that the future they had always dreamed of was now within their reach. The following months were marked by a steady, quiet peace as Naruto and Ino worked side by side, healing both the physical and emotional scars the war had left behind. The village was rebuilding, but more importantly, so were the people. The remnants of the war still lingered in the hearts of many, but hope had returned. And as the days passed, so did Naruto and Ino's relationship grow stronger. Ino had always been perceptive, but after the war, she saw more of Naruto than she ever had before. He wasn't the same brash, loud, impulsive boy she had first met. He had become someone wiser, someone who carried the weight of the world not with arrogance but with humility and care. His desire to protect others had only deepened, but it was his love for his friends, for his village, and for her, that stood out the most. There were moments when they would simply sit together, in silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon, their hands intertwined. In those quiet moments, words weren't needed. They had both fought for so long, endured so much, and now they could finally just be. Naruto had taken on the role of Hokage after much deliberation. His desire to protect the village and create a better world for everyone had never wavered, but now, it had evolved into something more personal. He was not just fighting for the village, he was fighting for his future, one that included Ino by his side. For Ino, the realization had been gradual. She had always loved him, in her own way, but the depths of that love were clearer to her now. She understood Naruto's dreams, his desires, his fears. She was his equal, not just in strength but in heart. And though their paths had been different, they had both walked through the flames of war, and now they stood, stronger together than they ever could have been apart. Ino had always been strong. As the daughter of the Yamanaka clan, she had been trained from a young age in the art of mind manipulation and sensory techniques. But her greatest strength lay in her heart. And now, she was using that strength not just for herself, but for the person who mattered most to her, Naruto. It wasn't just the big moments that defined their relationship. It was the quiet ones, the small gestures that spoke volumes. There were times when they would be walking together, and Naruto would instinctively reach out to take her hand, pulling her a little closer to him. Ino would smile, her heart swelling at the simple touch. It was a reminder that, no matter how chaotic the world was, they always had each other. But as much as they had healed, the shadows of the past still loomed. Old enemies, unresolved conflicts, and new challenges were never far from their minds. The bonds of the allied shinobi forces had been forged in battle, but now, they would need to stand strong against the trials of peace. Naruto and Ino knew that the world they fought to protect was still fragile, and they would have to work together to keep it from falling apart. One evening, as Naruto was sitting in his office in the Hokage Tower, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him, Ino entered, a soft smile on her lips. She had come to deliver a report, but there was something more in her eyes, a quiet concern. Long day? She asked, her voice gentle as she placed the report on his desk. Naruto rubbed his temples, trying to ease the tension. Yeah, a lot of decisions to make. I didn't realize how exhausting it would be, being Hokage. Ino sat down beside him, her presence calming. You're doing great, Naruto. The village is safe because of you. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's just, there's always something. New challenges, new problems, and I can't be everywhere at once. I want to make sure everyone is okay. Ino reached out and placed a hand on his arm, her touch a gentle reassurance. You're not alone, Naruto. We're all here to help, but you need to take care of yourself, too. He looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a quiet gratitude. I don't know what I'd do without you, Ino. She smiled softly, a blush creeping up her cheeks at his words. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here, always. Naruto's expression softened, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift. He had her by his side. No matter how difficult the road ahead, he knew that with Ino, they could face anything. Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a rhythm. Naruto's responsibilities as Hokage took up most of his time, but he always made sure to carve out moments for Ino. They would go on missions together, as they had done before, and each time, their bond grew stronger. During one particular mission, the two of them found themselves deep in the forests of the Land of Fire, tracking down a rogue group of ninjas who had been causing trouble near the village. The air was thick with tension as they moved silently through the trees, each step carefully calculated. Ino's senses were sharp, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. She could feel Naruto's presence behind her, his chakra a steady, comforting force. They didn't need to speak. Their bond was so strong that they moved in perfect harmony, each anticipating the other's moves. Ino's sensory jutsu guided Naruto, giving him the insight he needed to make swift and decisive attacks, while Naruto's raw power and speed allowed them to overwhelm their enemies with ease. As they reached the rogue group, they sprang into action. The battle was fierce, but together, Naruto and Ino were an unstoppable force. They worked in tandem, their synchronization flawless. Every strike, every move, was an extension of the other. Ino would provide the information Naruto needed, and he would unleash the full force of his strength, each blow landing with precision. The rogue ninjas were quickly subdued, and Ino's smile of satisfaction met Naruto's grin of triumph. That was amazing, Naruto, she said, breathless from the fight. He chuckled, wiping the sweat from his brow. You're not so bad yourself, Ino. They stood there for a moment, just taking it all in. The adrenaline from the fight slowly began to fade, and once again, the quiet, unspoken understanding between them filled the air. They didn't need to say anything. The mission was over, but they knew there would always be more challenges ahead. What mattered was that they faced them together. As they made their way back to the village, the setting sun bathed the world in a warm, golden light. Ino, walking beside Naruto, couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. There were no more wars to fight, no more enemies to defeat. The only thing that mattered now was the future. A future where they would build something new, a future where they would stand side by side, ready to face whatever came next. And as they walked, Ino knew that whatever the world had in store for them, they were ready. Together.